One is the recruiting process in general in corporate America, in any company, for the candidate experience is pretty shitty. I'm just going to be straight with you. I hear about it. I don't care if you're a CEO. I don't care if you're a staff accountant. People call me all the time to vent because they went through 3 interviews. They invested 10 hours of time. They went through the 6-week process. And then guess what? They just got ghosted, dropped off.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Building Scale, specifically the Building Connections series, where I get to hang out and talk with people I meet in my everyday life here in Phoenix. Amazing leaders, owners of businesses, all that fun jazz, and Jennifer Bookspan is definitely one of those. When I asked, I always ask who you are. Give me a little intro so I can really give a lot more meat on the bone in these intros that I give them. Company builder, talent innovator, people leader, and recruitment strategist is how she described herself, which I love because as the chief storyteller at Spot Migration, I get a lot of I'm the basic title of thing, right? But not Jen. She's like, no. I'm a company builder, a talent innovator, people leader, and recruitment strategist. She really kind of sends it home with the story, is what I like to think. And she's been doing recruiting for over 20 years. So she's fiercely committed to finding the best people and putting them in the right seats, which as an EOS company here at Spot, we love right people, right seats inherently. So, I met Jen through Keymakers, a networking organization here in Phoenix. And it was kind of this fun conversation we had at a ball game, a Diamondbacks game, and then have had multiple conversations since then. And it's always good to see her when I do, which is not nearly enough, but nonetheless, I got her to hop on the podcast and tell us a little bit about what she sees, some trends that are happening in the industry, how you find great people, when to know when to move on to the next stage, or, even when you're talking about the succession planning and what that looks like for leaders. So it was just really great conversation, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it as well. So with all that said, here's me and Jen. Jen, I love people so much, unbelievably much, that I need to ask about the who instead of the role. Why hire the who is essentially, I guess, the question I have.
Yeah. So that is a really good question. I love what we're talking about today because this is right in I think it's important for everyone. So I think a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about what they need to get done with their work, whether it's they're running a company, they're a leader, they're running a team, and they do a lot of thinking about what needs to get done, what needs to be built, what hasn't been accomplished. And I don't think people spend enough time on who instead of what. And the book I am referencing is Who, Not How. And it's a really short book. It's by Dan Campbell. I highly recommend it for anyone in that kind of a capacity, because you should be thinking about who you are, what you bring to the table, but who can accomplish things for you to make your organization more powerful, your company more powerful, instead of thinking that you do it all, because you can't, and you'll end up as a one-armed paperclip. You won't be able to accomplish it. So Who, Not How by Dan Campbell. And I think that thinking about that is really what gets you into thinking about recruiting, which is what I do.
Yeah, we grew a bunch last year. So our COO, effectively that's the seat she sits in, is doing our recruiting. She is pulling her hair out a bunch, is the easiest way to put it. A little bit to our fault for growing so fast. This is the issue of like everybody wants to grow fast, and then once you actually start growing fast, you just start realizing all the problems, not just even the hiring aspect of it, which is Herculean as it is, but then like, oh yeah, there's like 58 processes that you thought you had that are just totally broken now because you're growing too fast. So very much in that mindset. So I'm definitely going to check out the book and certainly give it to Kosh to say, hey, something to, feel as we continue to grow, because in my heart of why stop, even though Kosh is losing her mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, one thing that I always think of when I think about hiring, and it kind of comes into this, like, how do you build that team? Like, how do you get a team, and how do you know the who's that you're looking for? Maybe is the first question that should be asked.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love that you guys are hiring. It's very exciting. And what I would just say is there's a few simple things, not simple, but simple, not easy, simple, but not
Not
easy.
easy, simple,
So
but not easy.
right. I think it's really important that you know and really work on who you are looking, like what the role is, and really get serious about that and be clear about what you need versus what you want. Because sometimes if things get too out of hand, you're never going to find that person. It's like a purple unicorn. So I think it's important to be clear on that. And then alignment. Can I say that word again? Alignment. Get aligned with your team on what it is you're looking for, because that is probably the number one issue I see with companies and teams is the CFO is off wanting to hire, or a director of sales wants to go hire someone, but they're not aligned as a group, or the CEO has a vision. But if you don't get your team on the bus, then it's a waste of time and money. And the person that you bring on, you can just see down the road where it's going to go. So even though it's work, please get alignment on what you're looking for. And then I think that one of the things I think about, especially with a startup or a growing company, but it could be for any company, is think about not only what you need today, but what you're going to need. What's that role going to be in 6 months or a year? Because sometimes the role today is fairly tactical, but it might just become much more complex. And you may want to be thinking about hiring for where it's going to be in 6 months, or someone who has a capacity, versus just thinking about, well, this is what the job is today. And so that's hard, but I think it's important to think through.
That goes through the challenge of not over hiring as in the amount of people, but over hiring for a position. Like, especially when you're smaller and you start saying like, I need somebody really to oversee finances, or I need somebody to really oversee sales, or whatever it is, that the thing that you're trying to offload because you're doing everything, or, a small chunk of you are doing everything. What's that balance though? Because like, hey, like technically we need these things today and maybe in the next 6 months, but like I also need, you're down the road here, I'm going to need them to be a lot more strategic, right? So like, one, how do you sell that concept to somebody that is going to have those qualifications, instead of trying to grow them and really groom them into the thing you're trying to get out of them? How do you get them to buy in to like, hey, I'm going to come do this. I know the first, 6 months to a year might be a little beneath me or a little lower than what I like to do, but the upside is the future.
Very good question. Part of it has to do with if the person, you want to be honest, of course, because that's what you're getting. But if people have experiences with startups, or experiences where where they were involved with a massive growth situation, I think it's ideal, because they know where this goes or where it could go in a period of time. So I think getting some clarity on that. And I think someone who maybe doesn't have all the experience that you are going to need in 6 months, but has the capacity, that wants to take it on. So there's a couple of different ways you can look at it, but clearly you do not want to be dishonest about where it's going. And so I've seen it happen. I've seen mistakes happen where you make the easy decision to hire someone that can do the job today, but in 6 months, that person's way over their head, and you have to manage the situation and get someone else, and it's not good. So it's like a balance. But so I would just say, I think, not to be on too much of a tangent, but part of what I look for in people is like, what stage of a company are they really, like, do they shine? Like, where do they fit? Because some people are really good at the early stage. Some people are really good at that middle, like, scale. stage. Some people are really good at servicing, fine tuning, doing more that's already well established. And I think know who you are, know where you belong, and think about people and where they might be, because not everyone's going to be good for every company forever.
Yeah, that's be honest with yourself too, right? Like, where is your company at? Like, everybody wants to grow, but like, are you actually hitting growth? Like, are you doing the thing that you believe you want to be? And lots of times, I see this a ton where I'll go to conferences, industry conferences and things like that, and everybody in the room claims that they want to grow, but then I'll see them again the next year, and it'll be like, yep, still doing the same thing I was doing last year, and not actually growing. In comparison to like some people, you're like, oh man, like you've made unbelievable strides in a year. Like, it's like, holy crap. So being honest with yourself is probably really important. We believe in core values very, very deeply at Spot, and hiring, promoting, firing, all these different things kind of go through our core values. Um, Essentially glass of like looking through the looking glass. Where do you see core values in play here? Obviously, you have to find the right person for that role, right? There's a component there. The right seat is what we call it in EOS, but like finding the right person, like just you're the right human being for us. And sometimes that means you're not the right human being for us right now because the skill set that you have, we don't quite need, or we've passed that skill set.
That is really good. I think that is a big point, and I love that your core values are very much like leading out through who you are, because when I think about hiring, and if I'm a company, and I don't care if I'm a 1-person company or a 10,000 person company, I need to be who I am, and I need to represent that. And that means to me, like, lean into, hey, if you guys aren't the top payers in the world, but you have a great, like, you have a real development culture, and people really have a lot of advancement opportunity if they do well, or you don't have a lot of bureaucracy, like, sell what you are, not what you hope to be, or that you think people are going to want to hear, because you're going to show up. Like, Justin, just think about this, like dating. Like, you're going to be you're going to show up tomorrow as who you are. You can pretend for a while, but that Justin's going to show up. And so I just feel like companies need to own who they are and be who they are and represent themselves really clearly when they're interviewing, when they're attracting candidates, because it's just, you're going to deter the people that are not jiving. They're not on your vibe. Like, it's just going to be a natural thing. And it's much more likely that you're going to land and you're going to have people that get it, understand where you are, can be flexible with where your situation is, and they're going to be excited about it. So that's all the way through the recruiting process, how you represent yourselves, onboarding, which I can talk about too, but hopefully that helps. I think that's a big deal. Think of it as dating. Like, it's dating.
So other than my wife, I've not dated in a very long time, but I understand the concept of it. It makes tons of sense because I frequently think about this. This happened to me where I was writing emails, and I'm very energetic. I'm very exclamation points in my emails. This is just who I am, like it. And I remember asking Kasha again, man, Kasha is on my mind apparently today. I remember asking her, I'm saying like, hey, like, do you think this is coming off like cheesy or like too salesy or like this whole thing? And I remember her asking me, he's like, well, do you feel that way? Like, is that how you feel? Like, are you really excited? I'm like, yeah, that's just me. I don't know how else it's me. And she's like, well, then just do that. Because at the end of the day, getting somebody in your ecosphere or, in your connections, your network, right? They're eventually going to know that like, oh, Justin's super like bubbly and loud and exciting. And like, that is you. And if they don't like that, they're eventually going to find that out either way. So why not just in the beginning of a relationship, let them be aware that like, yeah, this is what I am. This is who I am. This is what you're getting. So yeah, that makes tons of sense.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, let's have a caveat. We all need to evolve. If there's some, people are doing some bad behaviors, we don't want that. But I also feel like you have to lean into who you are naturally. So I think that is probably the theme for me right now, is helping people lean into who they are, and companies lean into who they are. And it really sets you up for success as well. And I wanted to mention, so we talked about a little bit of like figuring out what you want and what you need, and the recruiting process. And there's just 2 little things that I feel like could be game changers if I'm a company. One is the recruiting process in general in corporate America, in any company. for the candidate experience is pretty shitty. I'm just going to be straight with you. I hear about it. I don't care if you're a CEO. I don't care if you're a staff accountant. People call me all the time to vent because they went through 3 interviews. They invested 10 hours of time. They went through the 6-week process. And then guess what? They just got ghosted, dropped off. And it happens way more than you ever want to know. And I don't think people understand it until they've experienced it personally. It's a very difficult thing. And I feel like people just communicate. Just let people go. If they're not going to be, be transparent as best you can, communicate when people are not. They will love you for it because they're going to remember you're going to stand out compared to most every other company that has the shittiest of shitty ways of communicating to candidates. So just FYI on that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, which is kind of boring, it's something that's overlooked a lot, is onboarding. And the reason I say that, you spend all this time, you get this person, right? Their first day, it's like you're spending all this time wooing them, you marry them, and then you kind of drop them off and say, here you go. And it is like, seriously, I think 23% of people leave within the first year, and part of it has to do with onboarding. And 69% of people, if they have a positive experience, will stay for 3 years or more. So
that's
just
huge. The obvious question is, what does good onboarding look like then? Certainly, when we think of ItSpot, like candid is one of our core values. So maybe sometimes we got to reel that in to a degree, because being too candid sometimes can be too detrimental, but that's the life we live. So we always want to give people feedback and say, this is good, bad, why you got hired, why there's an issue, all those different things. But onboarding, that's a thing that I'd love to hear more about.
I don't want someone to think that you have to plan a 12-week mapped out process where, that training. I'm thinking more like, have a plan. Who do they need to meet? What systems do they need to learn? Who's going to teach it to them? As your leader, are you going to do weekly check-ins or daily, like maybe the first week, daily check-ins, and then have a plan, take them to lunch, make sure they have connections or connection points that first week or two. Who are their key partners? Coach them, give them, to me, it's like investment. It's like, you've just made this huge investment, invest in them, because the success rate is super high. And it doesn't mean, like I said, I'm not expecting this itinerary that is super complex and every minute is dialed down. I just think you have to have a plan because it shows you care, and then they're going to feel that they have something to go by. And what I would do the reverse of that is when I've placed someone, what I give them, what advice I give them when they go to work, and I don't care what level it is. You are going to feel dumb for at least 6 months. Lean into it, because you're just going to feel dumb because you don't know where the bathroom is. You don't know the systems. You don't know the people. And I think you forget what that's like if you haven't been a new hire in a long time. So help them, give them resources so that they feel good and that you care. So I probably went on that for too long, but I can't stress it enough because I think people just overlook that as a part that is really important.
I think first impressions, right? Like we talk about this in sales all the time. Like, what is or when you get a new client, like that first impression, like when we onboard a new client, it's like that is a huge, crucial moment in our relationship for the next however long they're with us, 3 years, 5 years. Like that is such a huge differentiation. So it makes sense internally too, right? It's like somebody that you have, in the talent acquisition aspect, you've sold them on your company to come on in and join your team. Now you have to deliver an experience to whatever degree that is. But one, it has to also be true. You talked about like the wooing and then dropping off. Like it has to be still true to what you sold them. But then also like think about just having a plan. Like, hey, like it's not just, we need a new person to, run payroll or whatever. And it's like, sure, we'll hire them. And then they'll just try to figure things out. It's like, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I just had a leader talk to me up yesterday who was sold really hard on a company, went to work for them. Mm-hmm. After a month said, Jen, this was like a bait and switch. Like what they told me and what was so different. So it's easy to sell. It's easy to talk, but actions are what matters. And you know what? we're evaluating candidates all the time when we're in a process. Like, are they on time? Are they prepared? Do they ask the right questions? Do they have the experience? Like, we are always assessing candidates, but candidates are also assessing companies. And I think that it's like how you have to look at yourself. And it doesn't mean we're perfect. No one's perfect. Everyone messes up sometimes, but have a plan or have someone help you with a plan if you're not the best at planning. So
No, for sure. What about the other way? Like, when do you know when it's time to make a change? Like, when is maybe some signs, some indicators that says like, hey, like, you've been here for a while and you feel the way you feel, and like this is a good maybe chance to explore other opportunities?
that's a really good question. And I think that it's hard because I watch people either stay too long or stay not long enough. And it isn't perfect. I would just say, if you are thinking about leaving, like, sometimes leaving or doing something different comes to your mind, any human's mind, here and there at a bad moment, whatever. If you're thinking about it every day, it's probably a sign. Like, if you're thinking about and it comes to your mind every day, that might be maybe it's time for me. And I'm talking about, like, if you want to judge job change, I think, is that what you're saying? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
um,
What about when we're talking about high level, a partner, CEO, owner of a place? Like, sure, they are obviously anchored very differently than a general employee to the business. But what about them? Like, how do they know, hey, maybe this isn't the thing for me?
well, that is a whole nother. So let's talk about that. First of all, when do you think you should start planning? Like, Justin, when do you think you should start planning for a transition or a succession? Like, when?
I think the answer is like sooner than you think is probably somewhere in that ballpark. What I know is 5 years is not long enough. Like, maybe 10 years out before you think that, hey, I think I want to retire. Or I want to do something else, or whatever that kind of looks like in that transition. It's a long time. That's what I would know. But you can tell me.
Yeah, I think it's never too early. People say average is somewhere between 5 and 10 years for succession. I think it's probably 10, especially if you're an owner and you need to be thinking about that, but at least 5. And also just short-term contingency plan. Like, what if you were hit by a bus tomorrow? What is the plan? Like, do you have a plan in your company? Because that is something you should have mapped out if you don't today. Like, it's really important, kind of a serious thing, but important. And then I would just say, Justin, it's hard, but time, I hate to sound like a broken record, but time is shorter than you think. 10 years can go by pretty quickly. Maybe it doesn't feel like that when you're 25, but at 53, which as I am right now, where I am right now, I feel like, wow, 10 years can glide by. And I think that if we don't plan what we want, then we don't get it. And so I think as an owner, as an executive, I'm thinking about anyone in that capacity or where you are, you should be thinking about, like, where do you want to spend your time? And do you have a next chapter that you want to live? And if that's the case, our average lifespan is 80 years old. Granted, we're all going to live to be 100, right? So we've got more time. But if that is the case, like, I'm just going to put myself in those shoes. I'm 53. So if my lifespan is to 80, guess what? I am in the August of my life. So I am over the halfway mark of my life. You're probably in June, like late June, right? Somewhere around there.
I'm about halfway through. That's almost completely halfway through. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think we have a hard time as humans really facing that. And so I just would say sooner than later, and be on the offense, not the defense, because otherwise life's going to just hit you with something, and it might be a health thing or might be something else. And then all of a sudden you don't have control and you're not managing the narrative. And I think the other thing is just have different identities. I think that there's a lot of identity for all of us connected with work and being a professional. And that's really important and awesome, and do it. Everyone's different, but think about what other identities you want, because there are more to life as well. So hopefully
that's also
helps.
a difficult transition of identity crisis. So, and I think we've talked about this before, where your kids leave, right? Like, you have kids, they eventually go off to do their thing, where you were their complete caregiver. As they get older, they're better, but like, you're still the pay all the bills, do all the things, give them a house, all this stuff, and eventually they're just gone, right? It's not like they are, gone from your life completely. But it's like for the first 18 years, you spend 18 years with them. And then like the rest of their lives, you spend maybe a year with them, which is crazy. Like that's a unbelievable thing I think about. And my son's only 5. So that transition from like, I'm the everyday caregiver, every, daily, parent, compared to now I'm just, waiting for grandkids. Like it's a different game then, right? Like it maybe not too quickly after 18, but like eventually you can come back around and be like, oh, I get to do the grandpa or grandma thing, which is cool. But that identity does change. It's really hard. And for somebody that wasn't working and was just being a fully, parent, full-time parent, like that's their almost whole identity. And like to have that evaporate one day is like scary. Same thing with business owners, right? You have a business and then you sold that business after 30, 40 years. Who are you now is the question.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Number one on the parenting thing, we spend all of our time planning to have children.
Mm-hmm.
If you do decide to have kids or stepchildren or what, adopt. But no one really plans for when they leave, which they will, especially if you're doing, what you should, they're gonna. And so I think that you should have a plan because it'll make it better for them and you. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us to have multiple chapters over our lives to do all these things. And so, yes, going back to the identity of an owner in a business or an executive, I have friends with a very, very successful executive coach, and she gets brought in when a company is going to get acquired by another organization. And she can tell whether the owner's really going to give it up and do the deal or not by how they act and how connected to their identity the business is, because in the end, it can be so much money and they can't let go. It's like a part of who they are. And so I think it's just awareness. I would just say self-awareness, like be aware of who you are, what you want. Maybe you want to work until you drop dead. I don't know. That's okay. But make sure if that's not what you want, spend some time planning. I think of it like Michael Jordan, and you can relate to this as a Chicago native. He went out on top. Like, am I wrong? That guy went out on top.
He went out on top, but then came back and then went out on top again and then came back again. But yes, I completely agree. He's the greatest of all time. There's no question.
He managed his narrative. Like, he managed that narrative. And my dream for myself and for anyone out there is like, manage your narrative, like go out when you're good in a good place and you managed how you wanted to do it. Don't let it happen to you. Don't let stuff just happen to you. So that's kind of hard conversation, but
hard conversations are the ones we need to have more of, in my opinion. I think about when I worked at a law firm and seeing attorneys work into their 80s. And I thought to myself, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, why would you do that? Now, hey, like if your, core purpose in life is, to be an attorney, the greatest attorney and all those, however you want to phrase that. Sure. But like, there's something to be said about the other aspects of life. And especially once you get certainly into your 80s where I call it rolling the credits, right? Like you're already post credit right now. We're waiting for maybe another scene, but that's it. So I've seen it on both hands where some people are like, no, I want to close up early. Like I want to be done by the time I'm 53. Right. And like, now I'm going to go off and do my own thing or whatever that looks like. So yeah, I guess it's something personal, but to the point of succession, like, what should that start looking like in that 5 to 10 year plan? Like what should owners, executives start looking at in that time?
So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in this category. I can only give you my thoughts. So just know that, because but I would definitely talk to a professional who works with owners like this. I'm sure there are people out there who do, but I would just say, listen, you got to have you identified who could be your successor, or are you developing more than one person in your company? What is your plan? Is the company going to get sold? At that point, you should be talking to, like, what are your options, and think about that ahead. So that's what I would say is like plan ahead. And hey, if you're doing great and you want to keep going, great, but at least you have a plan if something changes on a dime. And then I think you should assess it. You should keep assessing it and forcing yourself to look at it every year, every 2 years, because things could change very, very rapidly. I was trying to think, there
So
was a story that I
it's like a
had.
business plan where it's like you make a plan whenever you do your strategic planning, and then in the next quarter you go back and you look at, all right, hey, where are we at with the plan? And like sometimes it's like, we found a whole different service line, so the plan is completely different now. Or you find out like, oh, we're not doing the plan, we are not on track, so we need to get back on track. So I concur with that. I think business life is very much, you just have to actually systematize it, right? You have to think, what's the structure I'm looking for to get to the thing I want to go to, and then check in. Hey, am I on track, or am I not on track? And if I'm not, why is that the case? And let's fix that. Or is the trajectory where we wanted to go not the North Star anymore, right? Like that always comes to that.
Right. Right. And get people in your, I would call it like your board of directors, like your trust little, board of directors or community of trust, to be honest with you and tell you what's up, if you don't want to hear it, even about where you are and what might be going on and what you might be hanging on to that you shouldn't. And then I think you should, it's not an urgent thing. It doesn't feel urgent, so people put it off, but then it's really important. And so then if you don't, then it's so important that to me, it's like legacy. What do you want for your legacy? Which people should be thinking about. Like, it's not too early to think about that as well. So.
No, I love that. I feel like there's two camps. Think about legacy, or people say you shouldn't think about it at all. And for me, I'm like, well, if you're trying to create a thing in any aspect of life, you have to think about it. Like that's, to me, is like, that's the only way. During COVID, it was 2020, November of 2020. I just looked this up the other day. I wrote my eulogy, right? Like, so I wrote this eulogy of like, hey, when I cash out at 80, I think it's at 80 or 81 or something, I have X amount of time until that point. Here's what I'd like somebody to say about me when I'm gone. It'd be really great if I achieved all these things in life. But that's the way I start looking at like my legacy of like, hey, if I got to here, that would be an amazing legacy for me. Now I just have to work it backwards and say like, okay, well, if I want to start a nonprofit and I have not done that yet, well, time's ticking, right? Like, and now it doesn't mean you have to do everything all at once, but you have to start setting the blocks in place to eventually have that beautiful legacy at the end of days.
You're so wise. I was thinking about this because I've had experiences like recently. So I have a grandfather who lived to be 99 and
Nice.
worked
Good
until he
genes.
was 92.
That's good for you, Jen. You're well on your way to 100.
Well, he worked until he was 92. He was in a different job,
All right.
but he loved going to the office every day. So that was really awesome. And still, all the way up, very smart. And then my mom, I lost, she was 72 and she worked all the way. And she kept saying, well, I'm going to work until I'm 70. I'm going to work until I'm 70. Because she wanted to get more money for Social Security. And so she spent all this time working, and then she had a disease and didn't make it. So I kind of feel like we don't know, like in the end, we don't know what our path is going to be. So I think we have to live it as best we can. And we don't waste time on, like, make sure you're focused in doing the things you want to do. And that means working too, and doing the kind of work that you love. And if you're not happy, you have agency to make a change. You always have agency to make a change. And I want to make sure I stress that, because I think people get stuck in this victim sometimes, like, I can't leave. And I feel like, no, you can with a plan. So, and
preach, Jen, preach. That's what I'm talking about. Very sorry to hear about your mom. That I can only imagine being a very rough time just in life, which I've certainly not experienced yet, but assuming I outlive my mom, that's a part of the life cycle, which is unfortunate for us. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about specifically if you have any in the AEC space. All my building scale friends and all of our clientele and all that stuff love to tell me how labor shortage is massive in the construction space specifically, and it's really hard to find people. In fact, I hear that more often than not across industries now. It's like, it's just super hard to find people, which, I mean, I guess our birth rates are somewhat down, but I feel like that can't have had quite the quick turn that would be. So what are you seeing as an expert?
yeah, when I look at our generations, actually, it's not, I think the Gen X generation is smaller, but if you look at millennials, Gen Z, and then the Gen Alpha that's coming, it's around the same. I think it's around 72 million. So it's not that different. What I think is going on, there's a couple things. We don't have, as the United States, we don't really have an apprentice apprenticeship culture, which is really a bummer. We used to, but I think that there's some great talent that you kind of get pushed on in a certain direction in education. And there's probably some great talent, especially in the construction and the trades, et cetera, that really could be developed. So my answer is go start early. If you can, get interns, start early in terms of even high school with people and see what you can do there, because you might be able to get some development, get some great candidates in that category if you can do it. Number 2 would be think differently, or think about, if possible, like some of your positions, I know you need a certain education and a certain background, and I get that. But where you can, maybe earlier stage or with different roles, can you look at different industries? So that could be relatable. Like one of the trends I'm seeing is in construction, people looking at manufacturing people, and people that have really awesome manufacturing best practices, because there's so much efficiency and operational efficiency in manufacturing that could be incredibly valuable when when your costs are up, your materials are up, your labor is up. So that leads into prefab facilities and building out modular homes or modular pieces in a plant setting. So I think there's a really interesting meld that's going on between those two categories, which I think is awesome. And there's big problems to solve in AEC. I think there's huge problems to solve, which means opportunities. So
Yeah, I completely agree. I see the shortage of labor where you're talking about, like, hey, like for a superintendent or somebody that's on the job, even a journeyman tradesman, like those are, you can't just wave the wand and now you have a ton of them, right? Like there's just not that many, because we have a deficit on the backlog of them. Now, sure, we're doing programs that are hopefully getting more kids and women specifically. I know a bunch of organizations that are trying to, hey, women in the trades kind of organizations. Like that's great. That's awesome for future. But like today we're like stuck in this thing, which then I start thinking, to your point, like, well, then you're probably going to have to change the process. Like, you can't change the amount of people because they're currently not available. Like you can't manufacture people overnight, at least not the ones with the experience. So that you start saying like, well, modular or prefab, things that are done on a manufacturing floor in comparison to on the job site, changes the whole game, because now you don't need to have that super skilled labor on the floor that you wouldn't necessarily on a job site. And you're able to do things at scale, because now it's, we can put X amount of these modular bathrooms or whatever it is together and then push them out. So no, I think that you're totally spot on that, or AI and robotics. One of those is going to catch up fast enough. And then that's going to be, or probably a blend of both. And that's going to be part of our solutions. Actually, that's a good question. People are always worried about AI in their jobs. Like that seems like a thing I hear all the time too. What's your thoughts on that? Are people's jobs gone now because we have really smart computers?
No, I think what you've probably heard this before. I think it's more that your role may change and it may get better. So I feel like there's still, it always creates more opportunities. It's just the job may be different or actually more enticing for people. So thinking about jobs in a different way could be really appealing. And in the end, we've got the problems we have to solve. We have a deficit of supply. Like, I don't know, it's a really wide range between 2 million and 7 million units in residential affordable housing that we are just in a deficit with. That's a big problem. We have zoning issues. That's a big problem. We have labor shortage. We have materials. So we've got like not enough supply. And then how are we going to like produce for the right amount of money? So I think, hey, all of you people out there, whoever's going to solve these problems, they're going to do really well and be really, really successful. And the one thing I was going to say about talent that I think is really important, talent is evenly distributed across gender, across race, across socioeconomic status. Like there is talent everywhere, but it's part of like finding the people and getting them developed. So I think we have to think differently. An example I would give is that I had a woman who is an HR executive in organizational development. We figured out that she was actually an executive, like more of a CEO type. And through some testing and development, and she ultimately is COO today, but without, like, she had the skills, she had the talent, but she just needed the skills. Like she needed to get there. So I think there are people in your organization who might be amazing. You just don't know it. It's like they're quietly there. They haven't been developed. So I think there's untapped potential, and you can do some work on testing and evaluating and assessing people to help develop them as well and find out what they might be good at.
Well, how does
I
one
just went
go
on a
through
tangent. I'm
testing like
sorry.
that? No, I love that. No, speak the truth. So that's all good. How do you test it? Like, because I'm so peoply, that's the word I'm going to use, peoply. Since I'm so peoply, it's more of like, for me, I'm always like, I'm going to talk to people and I'm going to get a good vibe upon how our experience I have with them. And then I'll say like, oh, you would be great to be our account executive in comparison to an engineer. Right. Like you are just more socially skilled. Like, I mean, that's essentially it. Engineers generally not the most social butterflies by any means. But hey, like if I find one that is, it's like, oh, there's probably something else that you could do that, one, you'll probably like more because it's more natural to you. But then two, you would be like a rock star at, which would then be amazing for us. So like, I understand it that way, as in the people-y way, but is there more of a like actual process or test or system that somebody could use to identify those things?
Yes. So that is a really good point. Yes, you do talk to people, you interview people, you figure out what they're good at. That's all good. But there are some elements that help you find deeper level data, and that could be assessments. And for example, there's a couple of assessments, although there's 25 I could probably name, but I recently got certified in Colby, which
Love
is
Colby.
so they are focused on how the cognitive part of the brain, which is basically how we do things. And what's cool about that is it's a non-biased test. So it's not about what you think or feel. It's about how, and there's some ways that we can get into this at some point, but it's just like figuring out what the job is and then how the person is a fit. There's also predictive index, which is also really awesome. So I feel like if you're in an org, those types of things, like getting involved with someone who can really help you understand people's strengths, do some analysis on the team and where you are, it can be super powerful, and thinking about who you hire next, but also thinking about who you already have on your team that could be good in a different role that you're not even thinking about yet. So I think it's just an opportunity to get really creative and think of it as an opportunity versus, I know it's a problem, but it can also be a really awesome opportunity for people if you create the right situation for it.
That goes back to the right seat content, right? It's just like, you're the right person, but you're currently not in the best seat for it. Maybe it's not like the wrong seat, but it's like, we're at like, 70% production from you just because it's not the right seat. But man, if I move you over to this other seat, now we're at like 100% production or whatever number. The increase in production is so much higher. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, let me give you a little example that might be
Sure.
tangible.
Please.
So I just met with a woman in the last 2 weeks. She has been struggling with her job. I think she feels really depleted, and we did some testing. So we did the Colby A, and I did a readout for her. We talked about it. And what we figured out was it wasn't about the job, but we figured out her environment was exhausting her because it was a lot of change, like constant change, constant client change, and a lot of ambiguity. And what we figured out from her profile is that she actually does better with a more like knowing those variables, and then she thrives. And so we kind of unhooked it, and we figured it out. Like if she was on a client for like a long-term client, it would be like in her perfect natural zone of thriving. And so that's the kind of stuff where if that's a little thing, but it could be huge in terms of like having your employees perform in their best self and create less turnover or less frustration for people. So it's really cool. It's such great stuff, and I love it. So I guess I'm in this really creating awareness for people stage. Self-awareness.
I love that. We need more of that. So keep doing the thing you're doing. This has been a ton of fun. I'm going to throw all your social and all that fun stuff in the show notes. But if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, Jen@bookspansearch.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. And then would you
Track
like to
me
tell the
down.
people, for sure, would you like to tell the people anything else before we say our goodbyes?
I think we're good. Hey, I'm just excited. And if you guys need help or you need to unlock something or figure something out, I'm happy to help. It's an honor to be here. Justin, thank you for the time. And I love talking about this stuff. So thank you for giving me some time with this.
No, absolutely. This was a ton of fun. I love these episodes because it's just, I don't know, it's just really, really relaxing, fun, and just, it's good, just knowledge gain for me, selfishly, totally selfishly for me. But then for anybody listening, I love pushing out content that's going to be usable and like people that are actually going to get like benefit and value and impact from it. So this has been great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. All right, listeners, until next time, adios.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.